How to detect bias in the news. The first form of bias we will look at is bias through emphasis. What stories are on the front page or at the top of the hour? Which stories get the largest headlines or the first and longest coverage on TV or radio? Consider how this placement influences people's sense of what is important. Here's a good example of bias through emphasis. We have Tiger Woods on the cover of Times magazine, where we see inside coverage of the Republican National Convention begins at on page 26. So basically, Time Wants You is emphasizing the importance of Tiger Woods and emphasizing the unimportance of the Republican National Convention because it's on page 26 rather than the front cover. Bias through omission. For example, if people booed during one of a politician's speeches, the booing can be described as remarks greeted by jeers, or the boos can be ignored as a handful of people who disagreed. Bias through omission can also be seen when you only really have one person's perspective from the scene, and that one person's perspective really only supports your story and your viewpoints. So you see this a lot through sports casts where they will be providing the perspective of the winning team and not providing this perspective of the losing team. Bias by headline. Obama has a big problem with white people, or white women, sorry. This is pretty self-explanatory. It's when a headline is really used to create a negative or positive picture in the reader's perception. Bias by photos. These are two really good examples of bias by photos. Are these photos indicative of how the star actually looks? So you might notice that these are very unfavorable photos of Paula Abdul and Paris Hilton, but these would no doubt be published on the cover of a magazine, maybe saying that, Paris Hilton is drugged up and, Paula Abdul needs tooth surgery, something along those lines to draw the reader in. Bias by use of language. There's three different photos here taken during the time of Hurricane Katrina. As we can see, the most important thing about these is the captions for each photo. The biased language in these captions is very, very evident. So we have a young man right here. A young man walks through chest-deep flood water after looting a grocery store in New Orleans on Tuesday, August 30th, 2005. Floodwaters continue to rise in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina did extensive damage. See another picture here. A looter carries a bucket of beer out of a grocery store in New Orleans on Tuesday, August 30th, 2005. So on and so forth. Then we have two other people right here. Two residents as you can notice they're white, two residents wade through chest-deep water after finding bread and soda from a local grocery store after Hurricane Katrina came through. So if you notice, we have two white people that no doubt stole this, but they are represented as finding the bread. We have two African American people who no doubt stole these products, and they're represented as looting. So this is a perfect example of bias by language. They're all doing the exact same thing, yet these people are represented in a more positive light with the word finding, rather than these people that are represented in a negative light with the word looting. Bias in numbers and statistics. Statistics need to be interpreted. They are often used to create false impressions. Also, you have to consider how many people are being sampled when dealing with statistics. For example, an article might say, 85% of people support Trump's campaign to be president. However, What you might not know is that only 100 people were surveyed. Therefore, this is an inaccurate depiction of widespread opinion. However, this information would be presented as a headline or in a news article to get people to think that President Trump is the way to go. Bias in the source. To detect bias, always consider where the news item comes from. So we see people that can write on a form. That's not a very good source. If you're looking to forums, which is anyone that can write on them, as your to influence your opinions and to influence your choices, you might want to start thinking twice about that. You need to be looking to sources that are more reputable. Bias by repetition. Sick of hearing stories about Prime Minister Trudeau, or Syrian refugees? This is bias by repetition. News companies or news stations, will often repeat news stories over and over and over again to really emphasize their importance. You also will see in a news article where words and language is repeated over and over again to create a negative or positive impression. That's bias by repetition as well.